friends, it's Carly and I'm back again with another review. So we are finally through our Ghostbusters Plasma Series individual figure reviews, and overwhelmingly I was really happy with everything that I saw. The Ghostbusters in particular were really good with a few little missteps, but for the most part I was really pleased with the way they came out. I wished the accessories packs would have been a little bit more complete and the things that we were looking for. It was nice to have the little tiny pieces, the goggles, the ghost trap, and the PKE meter, but I think overall I would have preferred to see blast accessories for each of those figures. And when it came to the female figures, they were just lacking overall, and that's a problem that we see sort of across the board, so it wasn't surprising. It was disappointing, but what can you do? At this point we sort of know that we're not going to quite be there yet with the female figures. There were a lot of positives with this series though overall. So now I am really excited to look at the actual BAF figure itself, which is the Gatekeeper, or the Keymaster, I'm sorry, Vinz Clortho. So Vinz Clortho is the terror dog, who is one of Gozer's two minions. And I think they gave us the Keymaster because they also gave us the Gatekeeper in Dana Azul. So that made sense to me. That choice was a solid one. And when I initially saw that this series was being made, this is the main reason that I got it. I really wanted this figure and I was really interested to see how he would come out. So the first thing that I noticed when I started to unpack these pieces and put this figure together was that the body was light. It's this hard plastic, you can hear, and it's hollow and it is so incredibly lightweight. So at first I was getting the impression that this figure was going to feel really, really cheap, and I was pretty bummed out by some of the things I was seeing in the paintwork. We'll look at those in just a second. But as I started to assemble him, I can say that the legs are much more solid and the head is also substantial. So I started to realize as I was putting him together that really the hollow, lightweight body sort of was a necessity in order for the figure to be able to pose properly, to take full advantage of all of his points of articulation in the legs and shoulders. It was kind of necessary for the body, which is a substantial portion of the bulk of the figure, be lightweight and able to sustain, to have the legs sustain the weight. So while that bothered me at first, it ended up making sense when the whole figure was put together. So if you're picking these up one at a time and you get the body and you feel it, don't let that be a deterrent as far as continuing on to build the BAF, because once it's all put together, the weight makes sense and the balance of the figure is really good. So let's take a look first at the head. I am really impressed with the way this head came together and the way that it moves. So this is a head that is actually on a peg that extends from the neck, which gives us that really awesome full range of motion. And when I'm really reminded of, you know, the puppeteer type figures from like Labyrinth and things like that, movies like that from the 80s where they actually had puppeteers working these figures, which is how it would have been probably in the 80s. And I just think that makes this feel really authentic, and that he is just really impressive in the range of motion you get from his head. I also love and am so impressed by the fact that he has a working jaw. So you can open his mouth and it's pretty terrifying. He's got a really creepy countenance. He's pretty scary looking. So I think the head is a win-win-win for me. I'm super excited about how flexible he is. Being able to open the mouth is awesome. I feel like that could have been a really big oversight, and I'm really stoked that they actually didn't miss the mark on that. So I'm happy with the way that the head looks and being able to open the mouth. Now we get into some things that are a little bit strange. We'll look at the points of articulation on the legs. The front legs are different than the back legs. So the first thing we have starting at the top is a butterfly-like joint, but it's not truly a butterfly joint because it really is sort of just the armpit, but the shape of his legs being like this makes it feel more like a broadening of the chest than just the typical lateral lift that we get, but the functionality of it is the same as a lateral lift. So his legs do sort of come out like this. We'll talk about that in a second. The elbows, or the front leg joints, bend to this point. So they straighten out like this, and then they bend to here. Then we've got a full, let's look at the foot here. The clawed feet look really great to me too. I really like the detail in them. They look terrifying and scary. So they turn 360 degrees and have you can see a side motion like this. So they go forward and back. You can see that I'm a little bit at a loss for words about these joints. Particularly the, I just took his leg off. Particularly the outward motion like this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I understand that this is an anthropomorphic dog type character, the Terror Hound, and that there isn't a lot that you can do. You know, there wouldn't be a lot of different poses that you would get from a figure like this. That said, the choice to make his front feet go out like this is puzzling to me. I'm sort of seeing some things now where if it was like an action pose and he were diving forward, but there's just something so strange about being able to do this with a quadrupedal figure. It just doesn't jive. Like, just something about it just doesn't make sense. And now this is a supernatural creature. It's a demon, so we're not bound necessarily to the way things work in the world, and that's fair. And I do have imagination for things like that. But when I'm holding the figure in hand, and I'm looking at like, okay, what can we do with these legs? What can we do with these joints? The shoulder, it just feels very strange to me. I'm not exactly sure what the practical nature of this is and how I could make use of that in displaying the figure. I will say though, thinking about that and looking at him, I do not know what type of use you could ever get out of this, but if you set him like this, you can stand him up. He will stand independently on his own. So if you want to pose him like that, I guess having his arms out like that works. It looks a little silly to me, but you know, it's an imaginary creature, so use your imagination. You can do whatever you want to. It just feels a little bit strange to me. In the movie, his pose was really like this, sitting as a dog. And that's probably how I would always pose him. So I understand the challenges of how to make this a highly articulate figure in a way that makes sense. And I just feel like, you know, the effort is definitely there because there are several moving points on the front arms, but the first in the shoulder just really doesn't make sense to me. I think I might have, they need to move, but, it just doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't really seem functional, like something that I'll ever use. That said, you know, as I said, you can stand him up on his hind feet like this. So being able to stand him up on his hind feet, let's talk about the back joints. So the back legs really only move forward and back like this. I mean, they do go all the way around so that you can bring them up close for, to sit him on the ground. They do not bend in the knee, which is another weird choice. Because literally, why not? There's absolutely no reason for it not to bend in this knee joint here. I do not get that at all. And it's actually, it kind of ticks me off. It doesn't make any sense for him not to be able to bend that joint. Where this they did, it's like there's effort there, but the effort doesn't make sense. There's no effort and it doesn't make sense. He does turn here in what is sort of an ankle joint. Well, it's more of like, it would be similar to the boot turn that I talk about a lot. So he turns here, and then he also has a turn in his foot right here in the ankle all the way around, and then he also has a foot that moves forward and flattens out like this. So looking at the sculpt also of the back feet, I think the back feet are really cool looking. I love the dew claw. I think the dew claw is really cool and creepy and scary looking. The sculpt on this is really great. I love the different wrinkles on his skin, the texture on his skin, but the points of articulation are few and confusing. So you can sit him in the pose that makes the most sense to me, which is like a dog, the way that he was in the film, like as a minion next to Gozer. So I think this is the way that most makes sense and probably what I will do. But there's a lot of other things you can do, and if you experiment with it and find something interesting, let me know. I would love to see what you guys are doing with your Terror Hounds, because I'm a little bit lost, quite frankly, with all of the different points of articulation being what they are, on how else I could pose him other than this that would be satisfying. So that's that on articulation, really. I think that this figure, honestly, you know, I talk a lot about articulation and I kind of harp on that, but with this particular figure, even though I see issues with the articulation, I don't feel like I ever intended or hoped for this to be a highly articulate figure. Now, it's created and sold and marketed that way, so they need to do what they say, but this always sort of looked and felt like a statue to me, and so I'm kind of fine with the fact that the articulation is a little bit strange and doesn't work. I'm really stoked about the movement of the head. I'm going to make great use of that, and then having him sit like a dog makes most sense to me, so the rest of it is sort of neither here nor there. There are some strange things that are going on with the paintwork though. While I'm really super stoked about the sculpt, I think the sculpt is fantastic, and I think the head overall is the most satisfying part of this figure. The eyes are scary, the horns have great depth and detail. They did some dry brushing on there to get like some dark shadows in his sort of yellowy horns that he's got. He's got two little teeny tiny horns on the top of his head that are just a great detail. All kinds of warts and pocks and wrinkles going on. The inside of his mouth is disgusting. He has sort of a horned tongue and these long yellow fangs. So I think the sculpt on the head is amazing, and I love everything that they did with it. I love the feet. I love the claws. I think that the sculpt on them is really fantastic and creepy and scary, the way that it should be. I'm a little bit creeped out by this rubberized tail that does not, it's not an articulate point, it's just a piece of rubber that wiggles, and it reminds me of Jason Alexander's character in Shallow Hal, who has that little doggy tail that wiggles. That's exactly what this is like. It is such a strange little, I don't know. Oh, it's so gross. It's so creepy. So the tail is definitely weird for me. I think that it might be like that just so that it can shift and flex based on how you have the dog sitting, but like, ugh, it just makes my skin crawl, which I guess is good for a terrifying creature that Vinz Clortho is supposed to be. I guess I should just sort of have the willies. So if that's the intent, then it definitely worked with this creepy little wiggly tail that he has. The thing about this figure that jives the least for me, and it's just, I just don't like the most, is the paintwork. So on his body, now the detail paint is fantastic. The face, the mouth, the teeth, the claws, all of those are fantastic, but it's the overall paint job that doesn't work. So they use one simple gray for the body. There's no dry brushing, no light, no shadow. There's nothing additionally done to that effect to create any sort of depth or grittiness to the character, which is unfortunate because since he is sculpted with lots of warts and pocks and wrinkles, it's an excellent opportunity that was just missed, and again just feels super lazy to me. Why wouldn't you add some shadow, add some sludge, add some, you know, goo or sores, or, you know, there's all kinds of ways to have done this that they didn't. So it's just one overall color, all of this detail and effort and energy put into this gorgeous, gorgeous face. And then they spray paint a line of silver down his back. And you can see what it looks like. I mean, to me, this is so cheap and so insanely lazy looking. I just like don't know how to feel about that choice. I don't know whose idea it was. It doesn't look fully executed by any stretch of the imagination, and just yuck to the silver line. I hate it. I would honestly rather, as disappointed as I am that they didn't do any depth or low light or grit or grime or anything in all of these. Look at all these wrinkles and bumps that are sculpted into his skin. Literally just a once over with a low light for using a dry brush would change everything and be so incredible. Do one quick highlight over all of the bumps and measles that he has all over his body. It would be incredible. I would rather see this figure all matte gray with just the claws and face painted well than to have this silver line. This silver line is so the opposite of a silver lining to this figure. It just makes it's just a horrible decision, a horrible, horrible design decision in every respect, and I really, really am bothered by it. While I don't think that it necessarily throws the figure over into a completely unsuccessful area, because we're looking at him head on, and when he is sitting like this, he looks fantastic. So the trick for me with displaying him, will be just to hide that altogether. But when you have a figure like this, that is this size, and in order to be 100% satisfied with it, or not like agitated about it, you have to hide an entire side of it. That's not good. So that really makes me mad. And let's just take one more close look at it. It literally looks like someone took an airbrush with some silver and went psh, and that's that. When all of this time was spent on this gorgeous head and all of the details that are put into that still also could have been done better, there's just no reason or excuse for this. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't look good, and the figure would be fine without it. So all of that said, though, even though I have some complaints and some things that are unusual with this, sitting like this on my shelf next to Gozer, I'm really happy with this figure. I think he's gonna look great, and I'm not gonna take the time to worry about correcting this silver line on his back, because he's gonna be sitting like this so you can't see it anyway. Yeah, so I think that he's going to display well. I've already done some funny photographs with him, and he photographs really, really well. I'm going to set him up on his hind legs and take a couple photos and put those on my Facebook. So if you guys want to check those out, I will share them on the Annoying You with Facebook friendship page. Annoying You with Friendship Facebook page, and yeah, you can see some of the funny things I was able to do. If you guys have a Vinz Clortho and you're doing fun things with his poses and fun things with photography, share those with me. Please link up and let me know what you guys are doing. You can find me on Instagram at YourAnnoyingFriendCar, and yeah, I would love to see what you guys are doing with this figure. Go ahead and tag me in your posts, and I will look at all of them. So that was the Ghostbusters Plasma Series. I am really excited to have gotten it. I really enjoyed this series overall. The Ghostbusters are the most important part of any Ghostbusters line of toys, and I don't think that Hasbro missed the mark on the Ghostbusters themselves. And while the female figures themselves, Dana and Gozer, weren't my favorite of all time, the problems and issues that we have with female action figures from Hasbro and other lines are pretty standard. They're to be expected. It's kind of disappointing, but it's not super surprising. And I think there's potential for them to still display well with either some customization or just some unique posing. So I'm not really upset. And ultimately, the Build-A-Fig was pretty satisfying. I really love his face. I love the way that he looks when he's sitting on his bottom, facing forward. The fact that his mouth opens and there's such detail in there is great for me. So I feel like overall this has been a really good bath experience, especially since it got to take me back to one of my all-time favorite franchises, and I just sort of got to relive how much I love Ghostbusters. And I think I'm gonna keep looking into getting more Ghostbusters figures, because this was really a fun experience. So let me know what you guys think of the bath, what you think of the series overall, if you're happy with these figures. I've gotten some recommendations from people about other figures I should look at or try, older ones that are great, figures from other lines. Diamond Select has a line of these. Let me know if you guys think it's worthwhile for me to check out others. I also have the vintage re-released Walmart exclusive, the Real Ghostbusters cartoon toys, and if you'd like me to review those, let me know in the comments. I've asked a couple of times. I've gotten sort of a sort of response. These particular videos haven't been like insanely popular, so if you guys aren't really interested in seeing those, maybe I'll just share some photos and we can sort of open a chat about them over on Facebook, and I won't do a whole video. But let me know what you want me to do and I will do it. Thank you guys so much for watching my videos. I am back with Marvel Legends again in the next couple of days. Look forward to those, and I will be back with another video soon. Bye, friends.